As the old saying goes, one thing leads to another. This might be especially true for Corey McCormick, my guest today on Tinnitist TV. Back in 2010, the California bassist, who had previously played with Chris Cornell, joined Lukas Nelson and Promise of the Real. Now that's a pretty good gig on its own, but it was really just a new beginning for McCormick, who soon found himself crossing paths with some truly major artists. He's played with Lukas Nelson's father, Willie Nelson. He's recorded and toured with Neil Young, who recruited Promise of the Real for a series of albums beginning with 2015's The Monsanto Years. He and Promise also backed up Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga in their 2018 movie A Star is Born. And if all that weren't enough, McCormick has also been working to get his own band Organa off the ground. The eclectic trio recently released their latest single, Shine, which mixes funk and soul with southern fried jam rock, and they're working towards a full-length album in the not-too-distant future. From a recent stop on Promise of the Real's seemingly endless road, McCormick zoomed in to talk about Organa, all his different bosses, and which other bands he'd like to join, since apparently he's still not busy enough already. Here's how it went. So why don't we start at the beginning for people who really don't know you yet? What's your musical origin story?
My musical origin story. Well, I started playing, in grade school. I started dancing first. That's kind of weird. When I was really little, I was really into Michael Jackson, and I'm talking like 6 or 7, and I took dance lessons. And that's kind of what got me started. That and like the roller rink, going to the roller rink, I was exposed to a lot of music that I didn't hear in my house. There wasn't any black music in my house. There wasn't pop music. It was it was pretty mellow. And then, I started playing in grade school, played the trumpet all the way through till college. I played trumpet, and I picked up a guitar in junior high and started teaching myself guitar, and went into college as a jazz guitar player. And then halfway through college, I picked up an upright bass. I was missing some of the classical orchestra interaction as a guitar player. You don't get to do that so much. So, and I figured with bass, I love all kinds of genres of music, and with bass, I could do everything. And everybody needs a bass player. So work-wise, it felt like a good move. And I started playing bass. I got in a band called the Big Pill, which was a original band, funk 8-piece band that we did the Warp Tour a couple of years, and just local gigs in LA. And then from there, I played with like everybody in LA and started doing auditions, and had some cool gigs, reggae gigs and things with this artist Elon. He used to sing with the Wailers. And then I got the gig with Chris Cornell, and that kind of opened up a bunch of doors for me, and played with a bunch of bands after that, and then ended up hooking up with Lukas. The drummer in Lukas's band, they started the band together, actually. And the drummer was a friend of mine from college, and they needed a bass player. And he just called me one day and he said, Lukas wants to jam with you. So I went down, and the rest is history.
Well, it sounds like it's been a nice, kind of gradual, even keeled progression, not a lot of culture shock moments.
Definitely not a lot of culture shock moments. A lot of hard work and a lot of sacrifice, and being poor and all that. But whatever. It's just money. That's why I got into music, because I watched my dad try to chase after money and work his job, and he hated it. And I just thought, well, why do something you hate all your whole life just because you want money? It didn't make sense to me. So I loved music, and I decided to pursue it. And my dad wasn't into it. He didn't support me. He told me, I'm not going to help you go to college. And so I left the house when I was 17, and I didn't look back. I just did what I wanted to do.
So have you made the Quentin Tarantino vow? He gets no money? No mansion, no Elvis cars. Is that it?
That's hilarious. Well, he's not around anymore,
Ah,
unfortunately.
okay. Ah,
Um, and it's a little bittersweet because playing with Neil Young, he would have lost his mind if he had seen me on stage with Neil Young, because he was just like the biggest Neil fan. I mean, that was the earliest music I heard as a child. So um, yeah, he missed out on some things,
that's too
unfortunately.
bad. Yeah. So, aside from the practical consideration of everybody needs a bass player, what was it that made you ultimately, land on bass as opposed to, you could have stuck with guitar, you could have stuck with trumpet, though, those are all sort of viable options as well for a working musician. What is it about the bass that really sort of speaks to you more than those other instruments?
Well, first transition was trumpet to guitar, and that transition happened mainly out of, like, when I started playing guitar, because it was visual. I started because I was improvising on the horn, and in the jazz bands I was always the soloist, but it was all by ear. I didn't know what I was doing. Even though I practiced scales and stuff, it was hard to conceptualize what was going on, because you only have these three valves. And when I started playing guitar, it was like, oh, I see all these scales, I see all these shapes and things. And then, I honestly, in LA, you can throw a rock and you're going to hit a guitar player, right? Like,
Sure.
they're just everywhere. And there's like very talented guitar players, and I was good. I could read well, and I can play all the different styles and stuff, but I wasn't like, I never worked on like the shredding aspect of guitar. And I just felt like, I didn't, all the guys that I was seeing that were successful had this thing that I just felt like I didn't have. I don't know. I just didn't feel like I was gonna make it as a guitar player for some reason. I had that feeling. And then I was missing playing orchestral music. And a lot of what I enjoyed about playing the trumpet was, to me, the real essence of being a musician is not only can you read music, and interpret what's on the page, but you can also sit in a section and blend with your section, and also hear across an orchestra to blend with whoever's playing the same part as you, or whatever it might be in that point. And you're also following the conductor. So there's all these things going on. It's a very complicated thing, which I missed a ton when I switched over to just being a guitar player. And so with the bass, I thought, I can do that. I can play in a section in an orchestra, but I could also play rock and roll. I can play jazz. I can do all these things. So my main focus, especially in the beginning, was the upright. I just focused on that for like 4 years. I never played an electric bass. Um, and when I transferred, I went to junior college first. And when I transferred to the university, I had a double scholarship to do the jazz program and the orchestral program, but I had so much jazz knowledge from the previous school that I just went into the orchestral world, to build those chops up on the bass. And one of my dreams was always to be in an orchestra, like a big orchestra. I still have a fantasy of moving to Japan. My wife's from Japan, but retiring in Japan and getting into an orchestra over there, and maybe, like, they have a pretty good jazz scene, like start doing some jazz over there. Because really, I didn't see myself as where I am now as like a rock and roll bass player. Like, I was like a session guy, jazz, orchestral. I liked rock and roll, I played it, but as a musician, I felt like doing those other things was more of a craft. And but there's not a lot of money in that world, like playing orchestra and jazz gigs is not very lucrative.
Well, it also seems to me, I mean, given what you're saying, that bass makes sense for you, because your approach to music seems to be very much a collaborative thing. You're not, I don't get the sense from you that you set out to want to be Jimmy Page in the Laser Pyramid. You know what I mean? You seem to want to be part of of an orchestra, of an ensemble, as opposed to being the guy out front. So are you comfortable then being on stage in front of, 40,000, 50,000 people?
Very comfortable. I used to have nerves when I was in my 20s. I had really bad stage fright as a kid, and like in college I had a hard time with my juries and things. My hands would shake and I'd be really nervous. But now I don't have that issue. I'm good. Like, we play in front of like these huge stadiums, and it's more exciting than nervous. Plus, I think the music is easier to do.
Right.
Not so nervous as far as like, can I play this or not? I know I feel confident. Where if I was gonna be like a soloist in front of an orchestra, I'd probably be a nervous wreck.
So you've obviously worked for about a decade now with Lukas, right? And that pulls you into the Neil Young universe. And then you've worked with Chris Cornell, as you mentioned, and obviously a diverse roster of people. Is there some commonality between all of these gigs, or all of these artists, that allows you to sort of fit into each of them seamlessly?
I think what allows me to fit in seamlessly is how much I listened to music as a kid, and all the different styles that I listened to and studied. Like, I mean, I was pretty intense in my bedroom every night, really, 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 really working on things. And that was, I mean, like 15 years of doing that. And also, I've been blessed to play with these guys that I grew up like. I mean, the first song I learned on guitar was Needle and the Damage Done. Like, I pretty much was born and bred to play with Neil Young and Chris Cornell. I mean, when the grunge scene, I knew Soundgarden before most people did, because I had one of my friends' older brothers had like a cassette tape, and it was the first Soundgarden thing, and no one knew who they were really. And so, I've been living and breathing grunge music since that moment. And so again, I feel like I don't know, I think I just set myself up in the right way with all the things I listened to.
Right.
And I enjoyed it.
How much do you have to change your approach to, say, between going out with Lukas and going out, with Neil in the thing?
It's not much different approach wise. Playing with Neil is similar to playing with Lukas in a lot of ways, where you just don't know what the hell's going to happen at any moment in time.
Do they all call a lot of audibles? Is that kind of a commonality? Yeah.
Well, with Neil, we never had a set list.
Yeah.
There's no set list. There's like a list of songs that's 300 deep, and I think in the beginning we had like a sketch of a list, but it would never be exactly what we wrote out. And then eventually it just went to no set list. So, playing with Neil is a lot of work for me as the bass player. A bass player in a rock band, you play one wrong note, everybody hears it. You play guitar and you play one wrong note, no one really knows the difference. But, you play a wrong note on stage, everybody turns around. So there's a lot of pressure. And so with Neil, it's every day I'm reviewing songs and, going through a list of 300 to 500 songs, making sure that I know those songs really well. And, I'm singing backgrounds as well. So all of those things, a lot to consider. And I feel like with Neil, there's more pressure, I guess. It's a bigger stage. And I think I put a lot of pressure on myself because I want to do well for him, and I want the band to shine as his backup band, and there's a lot of pressure on that. But and obviously it's a bigger scale playing with Neil. Of course, the Lukas thing is growing, and we've been playing bigger places and stuff. So, but yeah, I'd say that's the biggest thing, is the amount of material that Neil has.
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, at least they're all, 3 and 4 chord songs, but yeah, when there's like 300 of them, you
But
know.
Neil's like, one of those writers that, yeah, it's a 3 or 4 chord song, but the first verse might have a different chord. Like there's like
Hmm.
trap doors in these songs where they sound easy, but really, I mean, you gotta really have them internalized, especially as the bass player. I feel like, you know.
Yeah, and then I'm guessing you have to spend a lot of time just sort of being aware of where he might decide to go mid-song and
No
be
doubt.
prepared to take off after him.
One of the first gigs we played live with him, I came off stage and I was exhausted. I was just completely mentally drained, physically exhausted. And I'm thinking to myself, why am I so tired? Like, that wasn't that gnarly. I've done way more physical shows than that. And I had the realization I have to focus on him the whole show. I can't not be looking at him, because he'll just end a song in the middle of a song. He'll just turn around and put his guitar, like,
Yeah,
boom, and if you miss that, you know,
yeah,
um,
you're there all alone. Yeah.
and there's a lot of audibles and a lot of stuff going on. So just the fact that with Lukas, it's all more internalized now, because we've been doing this. I've been with him since pretty much the beginning. I think they were a band for about 18 months before I became the bass player. But so I've gone through all the processes of writing the songs with him, and doing all that. Where with Neil, it's all kind of new, even though I've listened to the songs, but there's a difference between like listening and actually being able to play it. Yeah.
And then on top of all this, you've got your own band. So what is this, just glutton for punishment here, or what? Why then go and, you know what? I need to have another band to have a responsibility for.
Yeah, I know it's crazy when you say it like that. But kind of out of the, I mean, I love Lukas. I love playing in this band. Everything about it's great, but I have other musical interests, and playing like country rock is fun and it's cool, but I also like pop music and funk and jazz
Got to bring that
and
Michael Jackson influence into play, right?
hey, I actually made my drummer play a fill from a Michael Jackson song in one of our songs that's coming out. So it was like, no, dude, he didn't want to play it. And I'm like, nope, you got to play that fill from that song, dude. That's the one I want. So he
There you
did,
go.
and it works.
Be in the
But
box.
it really just came out of like wanting to be creative and missing, that band, the Big Pill that I was in. That was an 8-year long. I put a lot of heart and soul into that band, and when it ended, it was. I felt like my musical identity had been lost, and I've been struggling to kind of find that since that band ended. And a couple of the guys from the band approached me and wanted to do a project, and I thought, okay, this is a good opportunity to start, do something of my own.
Mhm.
So yeah, the percussion player from the Big Pill, he's the singer of Organa now, and he also does the percussion stuff. But I just always loved his voice, and I thought, let's do this thing. And he's a good writer, and we collaborate well together. And then Nick Lewis is the guitar player from the Big Pill, and he also, we write well together. He comes with some great guitar, like funk riffs, and really opens a lot of doors for the writing. So it's been a little slow start with the Organa, just because I'm so busy,
Right.
but it's been a really good outlet for me.
Well, the sound is really interesting because, like you said, it's got a lot of elements to it. You've got pop, you've got rock, you've got jazz, you've got soul. It's a little bit of everything in there. Um, Talk to me about how you're writing these songs, because obviously, you can hear the structure in them. You can hear that they're things that people have written, but at the same time, there seems a lot of openness in them to sort of leave room for these songs to go places. So are you guys more sitting down in a room and just jamming and taking bits and turning those into songs, or coming in with things that are already written and expanding upon them, or what's the process for you, if there even is kind of a process?
Yeah, there kind of is. For this batch of songs, like we just released that single, but we have 10 other songs that I have to finish when I get home, and they're all really, really great. I cannot wait to get all these songs out. But basically how it's been working, I mean, it's different kind of from song to song, but let's take, for example, Shine, the single
Right.
I just put. That started with Nick was playing that guitar riff, and I started to hear some percussion things. So I just set up a drum loop of percussion, like a shaker and this gourd thing, and told him just play that riff a bunch of times, and then we kind of built the song around that. Gabe came in with those lyrics that were pretty much finished. I helped him write the last part of it, but generally that's how it works. Like Nick will play a riff, or I'll have an idea, and Gabe will say, oh, I have some lyrics that might work with that. But it's also happened another way where Gabe's coming to me with just a lyric sheet, and I'll have instantly. That's why I like writing with Gabe, because he'll bring me words and I instantly hear the music to the words. It's kind of weird. So a lot of the songs were written just like that. Like he brought in, like, I wrote this, and I just was like, oh, I can hear it go here and here and here, and then I figure it out, and that's how it goes. But sometimes we piece it together. It starts with a guitar riff or something interesting I've programmed on the computer or something.
So it sounds like a very organic process, which again kind of makes sense given your name, right? It's
Yeah.
So how are you gonna, find the time to really sort of devote enough time to, the time that this project requires, given all your other responsibilities? Or is this a thing now where you're going to go, so Lukas, I opening band for the next tour, I kind of have this idea,
Oh, you never know. Well, actually, the idea for me was to have this thing the idea is to build it. So putting the music out and build an audience, so that when I have time off, that maybe we can go play, with Organa. I'm trying to build an audience again over in Japan, because I'd love to take us over there at some point. And I'm hoping that in the future with Lukas, that the goal as a band is to not work 300 days a year like we used to, but instead really pick our battles for touring, and do less, and not do so much all year. So we're getting close to that, and for now all I'm trying to do is just build an audience for Organa, and then once I feel like we can go play out, I really want to do that. I want to try to get on some festivals, and I've already talked to like an old promoter that used to work with Lukas, and he's really interested in booking us, and it's just a matter of time. But for now, I'm just want to build an audience.
You're not just going to go out as a trio, right? I presume you're going to have some augmenting of things, because I would think you would want Gabe to be able to be out front, as opposed to trapped behind a drum kit or congas or whatever.
Yeah, the idea is to have, we have a drummer that I think is set in place for us, and I have I'll probably add a keyboard player, and I don't know, we've thrown around the idea of Gabe fronting the band and playing the percussion, but I'm still not sure about that, because he's, when he plays percussion, he's sitting down, and he's the vocalist, he's the lead, so there's not a lot of energy there. But that part of it's still in development too. Like our live thing, we've done a bunch of live shows in LA. I have a club in Pasadena that I can just call them, and they're like, yeah, come play. So I just use that to experiment with. So we're developing the live thing, and I think that we're going to work more on that. Like when I get home from this tour, we have some shows booked in LA, and eventually add like horn players and things like that. I want it to be just like a party,
Right. And I'm guessing you're hoping to get an album out next year. Is that the plan?
That's the plan. I think I'm gonna do some more singles. It really is a good way to build an audience up. And then eventually we'll put them all in a record, I think is the idea.
That's the way it works.
Yeah, that's the new way. All right. I don't, I'm old now, so I don't.
And so would you, I mean, if let's say you get an offer tomorrow from somebody else who wants to, take you out on tour in between all these other touring obligations you've got, are you at the point now where you're kind of going to go, okay, now I think I'm going to have to say thanks, but no thanks, because I really want to put the time into this baby?
I think it would depend on what it was. Like
Mhm.
I actually was trying for a while to kind of get a hold of Billy Gibbons. I know he's got a bass player already, but that is like that would be amazing. Like if they called me, I'd have to really, I think I'd be going. But yeah, I think it would depend on who it was and what it meant to me and if it was worth doing or not,
Right. Mhm.
because the Organa thing, the beauty of it is there's no pressure. We're not on any deadlines. We don't have anybody, a
Right.
record come over our head needing stuff. So I can kind of just do this as I go.
You're going to have to work on the beard though, if you're really going to get that ZZ Top gig.
I know. I had a bigger one, but I trimmed it down before we came out here. But I had the big one hoping, I'm like, I'm gonna hold it as long as I can.
So how is touring with Lukas and those guys now in terms of everything that's going on? I mean, it's got to be just extra layers of stuff to go through every night. Is it a reason? Have you got it down to kind of a science at this point, or is it all just kind of every day is a different protocol and a different schedule and a different procedure?
No, it's pretty much the same. We're all being very safe. There's no like rule, like you're not allowed to go outside of your hotel or anything, but we're all just kind of, we're either in the bus or in our rooms.
Right.
And then, it's actually been nice with Lukas. Lukas loves a party. So, before the show and after the show, our bus used to be just full of people. And I'm not so into that. I love a party too, but I'm out here to work, and playing the show is that job. And I like to be able to focus, and I have a routine where I warm up my voice. And then after the show, I also like to recover because it's a very physical show and I have some injuries, and it's nice to be able to like eat something and change out of my sweaty clothes where it before it would be, there'd be people on the bus. So you come on the bus and you just automatically hanging out and you
Right.
don't have usually drinking and you don't eat. And so I would get pretty beat up. But now with the COVID protocol, no one's allowed on the bus. And I love it. I absolutely love it. I love having the quiet. I love being able to come off stage and change and eat something before anything else happens. And I think the biggest issue is just that people, we have no shows every show. There's like 200 tickets that people bought and they just don't show up. And I think that has to do with the COVID thing. And I'd say that that's been the biggest bummer is the no shows. But I
Right.
also feel like we've been doing pretty good, all things considered.
But I'm guessing the people who do show, I imagine most of them are so starved for entertainment and to see you guys and just thrilled to be out, and that the crowds must be smaller but more I don't know, intensely enthusiastic.
It is intense. It
Yeah.
is intense. And we've never had it quite like this where people are lining up at the venue hours before the show. And this is our first real headlining tour. And it's actually more people than we've had at shows. I mean, it's been a little rough go with Lukas. We've done a lot of, we used to play bars like 30 people in there, and now we're playing these theaters where it's like some of them are sold out, some are just undersold out. So there's, 700 to 1,000 people there, which is amazing, especially during COVID. I'm really proud of the band and what we've been able to, how we've grown.